Now this video here follows the previous video, which was Defeating Adventism number 225A. If you haven't watched that one, you have to watch it to fully understand this video. Now, that video, the previous one I just mentioned, proved that this 1847 vision, as was shown in that video from early writings 1882, where Ellen White saw in vision, there's her divine authority, that she saw the ark in heaven. In the ark were the two tablets written with the finger of God and in heaven. But those tablets were smashed. She saw something absolutely impossible according to the biblical account to see, but yet she saw it. So let's just do a quick review of that right here. So the Bible uses that phrase, written with the finger of God, in terms of tablets only twice, and you see them right there. And those are the first set of tablets, and those tablets were never placed in the ark. Those tablets are described, again, those that were written with the finger of God, those were the ones that were destroyed at the base of Mount Sinai by Moses. Meaning, here's what's significant. Now, this phrase, written with the finger of God, has a lot of significance to Adventists. They either like to use it to prove we follow the Sabbath because it was written with the finger of God, or they condemn everybody who doesn't do it. How dare you not follow the Sabbath on the tablets written with the finger of God? But that's the problem. The fact that Ellen White saw these smashed tablets that were written with the finger of God, magically reassembled in the ark and in heaven, is just biblically wrong. Ellen White saw something in vision not taught in the Bible. And you know what? Because of that, this vision is utterly false. Seventh-day Adventism has no answer for this argument right here. How can Seventh-day Adventists answer that Ellen White saw in vision tablets written with the finger of God, which were smashed, but yes, she sees them in vision? They can't answer that. We mean that her whole vision is false. A vision claiming divine authority that includes content not found in the Bible is proof that the vision is false. But really, there's more to be said about this vision. This 1847 vision is cited in Adventist literature. It's the basis upon which all Sabbath keeping is currently going on in Adventism. Since this 1847 vision is clearly false, and Adventists no longer defend it. Go ahead, try Adventists. Defend it. Defend Ellen White seeing smashed tablets magically reassembled in the ark in heaven. Go ahead. Because they can't defend it, and because it's false, Seventh-day Adventist Sabbath keeping is now false. See, this is the vision that started Sabbath keeping in 1847, but that vision is false, therefore Seventh-day Adventist Sabbath keeping is false. I'm going to be repeating and saying more of that later on. Now, Seventh-day Adventists as a body did not universally keep the Sabbath until after this vision. Now, I realize Adventists don't understand or know their own history, so I made this video right here. Defeating Adventism number 158 gives a history of Seventh-day Adventist Sabbath keeping from when it originally started to today. But let me just prove here. Let's just look right here. Prove here, this 1847 vision starts Sabbath keeping. Here it is right here in 1924. You can see 1847 vision, Topsham, Maine. I mean, there it is right there in early writings. It says, at that time, the Sabbath truth was beginning to be made known among Advent people. It didn't say they were observing the Sabbath. It was beginning to made known in 1847. Now, Adventist literature is just full of this kind of quote here about the Sabbath being restored by Adventists, but that doesn't actually start until after 1847. Continue reading with me here. How about this quote from 1947? Here it is again, a few months later, Topsham, Maine, 1847. There's the vision. Read with me here. To her amazement, the fourth commandment seemed to have a special halo of light around it. It shone above them all. Thus was revealed to her the importance of the Sabbath. So the importance of the Sabbath was revealed to her in 1847. Not 1846, 1845, or 1844, but 1847. And that's author White, author of that article. Let's look at this next article. So you can see again on the right-hand side, there's the top piece, Sabbath, April 3rd, 1847, Topsham, Maine. Again, they're citing that same vision. Now let's look at the bottom portion. At the fourth, the Sabbath commandment shone above them all, for the Sabbath was set apart to be kept in honor of God's holy name. The holy Sabbath looked glorious. A halo of glory was around it. There was also shown her the change of the Sabbath, the significance of Sabbath observance. So the author of this article is saying, okay, she saw that there was a change in the Sabbath, and that's true. That's what this vision had about the Pope changing the Sabbath. But it's the significance of Sabbath observance. So Ellen White did not know the significance of Sabbath observance until 1847. Now stop with me here, because we're going to look at this right here. So I'm going to basically show you two books. I mean, I've been referencing this one. This one was shown in the previous video. But this one here will be very good too. After all, it's called what? The Sabbath in Scripture and History, and by Review and Herald Press. So now let's look at what it says about the Sabbath in Scripture and History right here. There's the very book. We can see it's copyrighted in 1982. And look what it says here on page 248. Now, it says, in a vision late the following winter, a few months after their marriage, she saw Jesus raise the cover of the ark in the sanctuary in heaven. Within the ark, she saw the tablets. Okay, so they're referencing the same vision right here, because that's the only vision in Topsham, Maine, 1847, in which this is part of that. And let's continue reading. Then it says here, the vision emphasizing the perpetuity of the law of God, including the Sabbath, confirmed her and her husband in its observance. Footnote 30, which is actually early writings. And then it says this is very important. The prediction that many would embrace the Sabbath was soon to become a reality. They were not embracing the Sabbath, but it was a prediction that many would embrace the Sabbath, and that, once again, meaning after 1847. Well, how do I know that? Because we're just going to turn the page in this book, and we go to page 249 now, and they talk about Sabbath conferences. Sabbath conferences don't start until 1848. Right here in front of you on the screen. How do you have a Sabbath conference in 1848 if you're already keeping the Sabbath? Especially a first Sabbath conference, which just so happens to follow the 1847 Sabbath vision. Let's continue reading. So there's that conference. They're talking about the very first Sabbath conference in April and November of 1848. And James and Ellen and Joseph Bates, well, they were the primary speakers, and their main subject was the Sabbath and the third angel's message. Now, Ellen White wrote of this conference, and she said this: it was in a setting of the third angel's message that the Sabbath became relevant to many Adventists and began to take hold of them as a group. This is 1848. The Sabbath is beginning to take hold. Now, James White also writes of Sabbath conferences here. He's talking about all these people from all these different places in New England, New York, etc. James White wrote in 1853, well after 1848, that these people had come from various denominations. They hold different views on some subjects. He said, yet thank heaven, the Sabbath is a mighty platform on which we all can stand. So what do we know? This 1847 vision was followed by Sabbath conferences starting in 1848. Sabbath acceptance in 1848, as Ellen White wrote about, was just starting to be accepted amongst the Adventists, following her vision in 1847. Not until 1853, James White wrote that the Sabbath unity was held among Seventh-day Adventists. So this 1847 vision is the vision which started Seventh-day Adventist Sabbath keeping among all Adventists. But this vision has been proven false. Ellen White saw the smashed tablets written by the finger of God in heaven in an ark, of which, of course, the Bible knows nothing about. Now, the basis for the Seventh-day Adventist Sabbath, again, is this vision, but it's based on tablets that were smashed, magically reassembled, magically transported to heaven, maybe by her guiding angel. Probably went out with his divine super glue, put them together in an ark in heaven so she could see them. Adventist Sabbath doctrine is based on smashed tablets and a false vision. This is important. Adventists are well aware of this 1847 vision and the so-called halo over the fourth commandment. And you can see here in this book, which has some great illustrations, copyrighted in 1959 by the famous author Maxwell, all Adventists know. And look at this. Here's the Sabbath with its own halo shown on pages 372 and 373 of this book. And note what Adventists carve on their tablets. They carve the whole Exodus chapter 20 Sabbath. But Based on that and what we know that this vision is false, I constructed a logical syllogism of describing this 1847 Seventh-day Adventist vision, which Seventh-day Adventists can't refute now is false because she saw smashed tablets. So a syllogism is this. It makes one argument, which is true. It makes a second argument, which is true. Those two arguments result in a conclusion. Look with me here. So Ellen White's vision of the smashed tablets in heaven reassembled in the ark itself proves this vision false. That statement right there stands and cannot be proven to be untrue. The next true statement is this. Seventh-day Adventist Sabbath keeping, well, it's based on a false vision. The conclusion is, therefore, the Seventh-day Adventist Sabbath is false. There it is. Seventh-day Adventist, your Sabbath, belief number 20, false, done, over, because of the vision of the smashed tablets made whole by Ellen White. But I came across more evidence to prove Ellen White is a false teacher. Adventists like to say Ellen White, she's just the lesser light pointing to the greater light, meaning all she does is she just has these visions and teachings, and all she does is point to the Bible or direct people to the Bible. False. Wrong. And we're going to prove that right here, right now. Look here. Signs of the Times magazine, April 14th, 1881. This is the earliest account of this I could find. And the author is Ellen White. And she's talking about Jericho. This is actually Joshua chapter 6. And you can see at the very top, he then gave Joshua instructions for taking Jericho. Keep reading, though. That mighty strong hold where idolatrous inhabitants so long defiled the God of Israel. And then keep reading. Encouraged by this fresh assurance of divine support, Joshua proceeded to marshal the hosts of Israel. She's recounting Joshua 6. In the foremost ranks were placed a chosen body of armed men, not now to exercise their skill in warfare, but to believe and obey the instructions given from God. Next followed the 7 priests with the trumpets. Then the ark of God, surrounded by a halo of divine glory, was borne by the priest, and they were clad in rich and particular dress, denoting their sacred office. I call your attention to the bottom of the page. The ark of God is surrounded by a halo. The priests are described as clad in rich and particular dress, denoting their sacred office. That caught my attention. What I also found was this was cited in 1902, 1918, 1923. 1902 was particular because they didn't cite Ellen White. Here we are again, having the teachings of Ellen White taught but not cited. Here's how you Adventists can say, my church doesn't teach Ellen White. Well, they taught it in 1902 and they didn't even cite Ellen White. But in the 1890 Patriarchs and Prophets, about 9 years after this original quote, the same exact quote appears. There's 3 of them right here in front of you. The halo around the ark and the fancy dressed priest. And you know what? They continue teaching it. And now they're citing Patriarchs and Prophets. They're not citing the original 1881 Signs of the Times. And they do it again here in 1928 and 1933. Let's look at Joshua 6. I underlined the entire chapter of Joshua 6, which is the very account Ellen White cited. Everywhere you see the word priest or everywhere you see the word ark, I underlined it here. Tell me where you see the ark is described with a halo. And tell me where you see priests are clad in their rich dress and all fancy. You don't. Look at verse 6. Do we see an ark with a halo? Do we see priests described as fancy dress? No. How about verse 4, verse 6, verse 7, verse 8, verse 9, verse 11, verse 12? There's no ark with a halo. There's no fancy dressed priests. Let's continue reading. Verse 13, verse 16. Now you see a dotted line under verse 16. You know why? Because the word priest and the word ark do not appear for the rest of Joshua chapter 6. It's just not there all the way to the end in verse 27. Now we have 2 accounts of Ellen White using a halo, and both are false. Ellen White's description and her scriptural embellishment of Joshua chapter 6, she puts a halo around the ark. It's just utterly despicable. And then she describes the priest dressed as, and they're clad richly. It's just not there. She is not a lesser light pointing to a greater light. She has no light. But let me say this. This Joshua embellishment that I just went through here, it's not the significant issue of this video. The false vision is the significant issue of this video. Look with me here. We're going to go over this one piece at a time. Once again, the syllogism. The smashed tablets of Exodus 32:19. It proves this later 1847 vision is false. Therefore, the Seventh-day Adventist doctrine of the Sabbath is likewise false. Why? Because the original tablets that were written with the finger of God were broken. They were incomplete. Unbroken tablets with the Sabbath command were therefore unavailable for her to even see in her vision. But she saw them. She put them in there. So it means this 1847 vision, which claimed to see the original tablets intact in the ark, is a false vision. Therefore, a vision claiming to see them in 1847 and in heaven and in the ark is false. The Adventist Sabbath is built. It is conclusively false. This vision is false. Seventh-day Adventism can no longer defend their Sabbath or Ellen White because this vision is false. Seventh-day Adventism, if you want to defend this vision and Ellen White, go ahead and try, because you can't. The tablets written with the finger of God were smashed. They were not magically reassembled. Therefore, Ellen White could not see them. And your Sabbath keeping of today is built on this false vision. Adventist, I hereby declare you free from this false vision of Ellen White and actually free from the Sabbath.